My sister and her husband have been struggling with infertility since they got married 12 years ago. They've tried absolutely everything, from medical to spiritual, but unfortunately, nothing works. Now that she's approaching late 30s, they're starting to look into adoption, but it's also been a slow going. Since their financial condition isn't exactly stable from multiple rounds of fertility treatments they went through. I can only imagine the struggle, and I sympathize with her. But the stress this situation is bringing her and her husband honestly puts a strain on our relationship. My husband and I lost our best friends, Mason and his wife, Kate, 2 weeks ago in a horrible car accident. They left behind their son Pete, who isn't even 2 yet. It was so sudden and so heart-wrenching. We're still grieving, which lowers out contact with a lot of people, including my sister and Bil. Our main concern right now is ourselves and Pete, whose custody has come to us because we're both his godparents. Actively engaged in Pete's life since his birth. And because Mason and Kate have neither left a will nor have immediate living relatives who can take him in. We've decided to adopt Pete as soon as we can stomach the process. My husband and I never planned on having kids, and even if we did, this is absolutely not the way we want to go about it. The situation is far from ideal, but we're starting the adoption process yesterday, for Pete's safety if nothing else. We broke the news to our extended families and friends, letting them know that my husband and I won't be very available for a little longer because of this. I know my sister and brother-in-law will have something to say about this. I'm prepared for a few heated text messages or voicemails. However, I didn't expect them to turn up on our doorstep, crying about how unfair it is that we were given everything they wanted, and how we didn't deserve to be parents because we didn't go through what they had to. I've never seen my husband so angry before. He's usually very mild and gentle, but recent events have stretched our patience to the limits. We kicked them off of our porch, and I told my sister before she left that since our pain inconveniences her so much, I won't have her around me and my family at all anymore. I know she made a fuss about it, and now everyone has something to say to us. We turned off our phones, so we don't know which ones are cursing us and which one aren't. I know some did //r. My husband and I are both in pain and grieving, and we can't trust ourselves to be objective. For the sake of disclosure, my husband and I are both men. No, this is not a case of homophobia. My sister, for all her fault, was the first person to accept me for who I love. I am a high school math teacher, and we were creating a schedule for next year and divvying up workloads. I noticed I got almost 50% of the test creation and had 2 plannings missing from my schedule next year, for every one for the other 6 women in my department. There are 8 of us. My department head assigned herself nothing as she is managing and needs every prep. But that's another quibble. I am not the newest and in fact have seniority some of these women, but I'm also not the most experienced, so it's not like these are struggling new teachers who need help. So, I asked why it was divided this way. I was told, well, Ms. Millie is pregnant and the rest of us have families. If you have to stay late, it's no big deal. I can go to my principal and deal with it that way. What they've done actually breaks the union contract. But I really was offended by this. I tried to explain my offense, and they literally stared at me gobsmacked. I actually want to know how to discuss this with them. These are all women who I have previously gotten along with and liked. When the last one, Ms. Millie, got pregnant this year, there have been some conflicts. She is in my grade level. And they made me take on some of her work basically because she had some complications. This I did, but I think planning for me to do more is very different than an emergent health issue. As well as some uncomfortable situations for me, having to participate and buy stuff for her baby shower. When I'm not really into those things, but I did so to not cause waves. A lot of people have advised go to the union, go to the principal, and I absolutely will if necessary. I want to be clear, I'm not worried at all that I'll be forced to work this schedule, but these are my colleagues. Many have been working with me 5+ years, and we have lots of meetings and times together, where it's helpful to get along. So I do try to get along, like the baby shower thing, and be a good work friend and colleague. I just want a better way to communicate myself than I had today. I was entirely shocked and very indignant and just found myself unable to express myself well, and I was hoping for ways to approach that someone with their attitude might understand because I can't empathize with it at all. myself and viewing the other side is how I always try to look at problem solving. I am a 19 years old female. I have an estranged grandpa more or less. He's my dad's father, but my dad hardly had a relationship with him. I have 2 other siblings, one younger and one older. My grandma divorced my grandpa when my dad was only 10. So he lived with my grandma his whole life in a different state and didn't see him. When he got older, he saw him a little more, and my grandpa started coming around a little bit more as well. He'd stay for a week at a time and then go home. He was an old, bitter man, to be honest. He never got remarried and lived his whole life in his coastal town with the same friends he'd had his whole life. He wasn't pleasant to be around and could hold grudges longer than anyone I've ever met. But regardless of this, he was filthy rich. He owned a successful business that he sold for $1 million. He retired after selling, but his house sits on an island as well as the biggest piece of land on the island. So it sold for well over $3 million. I was never close with my grandpa, but I took after his sister who is in right now, and he adores her. He always told me that he was proud to see me follow in her footsteps. He died a few months ago. Since then, my family has been torn apart. He left everything to me. He essentially liquidated all of his assets, and it ended up being close to $8 million. I was shocked. I didn't and still don't know what to do with the money, but I'm going to save it. My dad and stepmom as well as my siblings are hounding me to split the money with them. I just can't do it. My dad is an alcoholic who never said anything nice about his dad. Despite him being bitter, my grandpa actually bought my dad a $300,000 house. My dad would 100% drink away any money given to him. As far as my siblings, my brother has full financial support from my grandma as he is the favorite, and he's very wasteful and ungrateful. He never talks to me and always is very mean to me when he does. My little sister is the only person I've actually considered. She's very young, and that's really the only thing stopping me. Her mom is money-oriented and would take the money from her. So I'm waiting until she turns 18, and I offered to pay for her college. But now my family is telling me I'm unfair and the money doesn't belong to me and I'm not deserving of it. That I'm too young and I'll waste it on cars and clothes. I don't agree, and now they're all threatening to cut me off and never speak to me. Or even sue me if I don't give them all a chunk of the money. I don't know what to do, and I'm buckling under pressure here. I've already had 2 police officers out to my house because my dad is claiming I stole the money from him. Everything was through an attorney. I know I did nothing wrong legally, but morally? So recently I found out my 15-year-old son, Jacob, pulled an incredibly cruel prank on one of the girls I'll call Ashley, that's in his friend group. I know this girl. She's been to our house and even attended Jacob's birthday party a month ago. She seemed incredibly sweet, if not a bit shy. So when my oldest son, Mark, he's 17, came to me and told me Jacob had asked Ashley out on a date as a prank, I was stunned. I of course asked how he could know this, hoping as any mother would that it wasn't true. But Mark showed me the family tablet we all use, but mostly my sons do, and it seems Jacob forgot to log out of his chatting app, Discord. I read the long series of messages between Jacob and his friends as they mocked Ashley all through this heartless prank. I was speechless. And that's not even getting into how he was talking, like he was some thug and not a 15-year-old living in a gated community. At first I couldn't figure out what to do or how to proceed. I'll admit that I never once imagined either of my boys would be the type of person to do something like that. But there was no way in hell I was letting this go. So after a day of thought, I decided what was going to happen. First things first, he was grounded. For how long, I'm not sure. Secondly, I'd gotten Jacob a bike for his birthday, but it hadn't arrived until the day previous, and I'd planned to give it to him when my parents came to visit since they'd been unable to make his party. But instead of that, I showed him I knew about the prank and told him he was grounded. Then I made him carry the new bike out of my bedroom closet and to the car before driving to Ashley's house, him crying the whole way. I'd called her parents earlier and explained everything, and so once we got there I had him cart it to their front porch and ring the bell. Then in front of me, Ashley, her parents, and God, I had him give a sincere apology and gift her the bike. Even I apologized to her, saying I didn't raise my boy this way and what he did was unforgivable. I also called the parents of the other boys who were a part of this little stunt, and they all seemed rightfully horrified by their son's involvement. I felt I'd handled this all as best as I could, and my friends agreed. Though once my parents found out that I'd made Jacob give his birthday gift away, they said what I did went too far. I still feel like what I did was right, but having my parents more or less dogpile on me like this actually made me wonder if how I handled it was too extreme.